All right, guys, got a problem with the Traverse Drive, and as some of you guys know, I get kayaks sent to me as trade for content. Now, the trade for that content, I promise not a favorable review. I promise a truthful review, because at the end of the day, my #1 priority is you, making sure that you guys out there know where to put your hard-earned money. So this may be an isolated incident, but I want to share with you what I came across. This is the Camino Journey Outpost 128, the new kid on the block. And after putting this thing through the paces, I've got some thoughts. Let's hop in. Let's start with some numbers. It's 12 foot 8 inches long, 35 inches wide. The hull weight 75 pounds, and the fitted hull weight is 103 pounds. This thing has a 500-pound weight capacity. So it's already telling you quite a bit about the kayak. It's not a grab and go. This is a kayak. You'll need a cart to the water, a truck bed extender like my Malone right there, maybe like native Sidekicks, or well, maybe not. I'll get to that later. This is going to be the flagship of the CAJO Pro series. It's going to be built for motors, built for electronics, built for pedal power, and a ton of rigging options. At the bow, working backwards, right, you're going to have 2 waterproof in-hull storage hatches right here and right here. It's going to come with 3 power plates for electrical rigging. 1, head back here, 2, and 3. This right here is going to be a removable electronics trunk. It's going to fit 12-inch transducers right here, unless you put these quad rails up here. And it's also going to fit a 30 amp hour battery inside. It's also going to have EVA deck padding in the front, also back here, and in the tank well storage. So big fan of deck padding on premium kayaks. Not only that, you're gonna get 4 3600 series tackle tray slots right there and right there. You're gonna get this 8-position high-low tilt Horizon Pro seat with armrests. This is not a common feature. We'll get to that in a little bit. It's gonna be motor compatible on the back. You can take this off and put a motor here if you want. You could put a motor on the front if you wanted. It's got the slots for that. It'll take a Traverse drive, which is going to be the prop drive, or it's also a fin drive compatible. It's going to come with 4 horizontal rod stagers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and also 4 vertical rod stagers, 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I like about these, they're not straight up in the air. They're actually angled back a little bit, so you can kind of see the angles on both of those. It's going to come with a fatback Traverse rudder system and anchor ready chutes and anchor pole mounts right here on both sides. Also, it's going to come with the under the seat storage right here. It's a nice little slide tray, and it's got the slide lock foot braces right there. So really, there is like 0 wasted space on this platform. But to be honest, that cockpit and kayak design feels really familiar to me. It feels like I'm fishing out of my Bonafide P127. So very close feels. If you've ever been one of those, this is what this feels like. And I think it's going to appeal to anglers who really want a fishing kayak that is polished right out of the gate. Not everybody wants to spend months, right, modifying a kayak before it fishes well, but this one kind of feels ready from day one. Now, one of the biggest features is going to be the new Traverse drive, right? This is for a lot of anglers. Once you go to a pedal kayak, it completely changes how you fish. You're gonna get semi hands-free boat control, right? Better positioning. You can keep your lure moving while adjusting the kayak. And ultimately, you're just fishing more efficiently. Now, I actually tried to beat this thing up. I really tried to put some stress on the gears inside, and it held up. And of course, because this is a prop style drive, you can get instant reverse, which is a huge advantage when you're fishing around docks or cover, right? Let's say you hook a good fish, right? You can immediately start backpedaling away from whatever that fish is trying to bury you in, right? You can also backpedal while fighting the fish, which helps maintain tension and reduces those accidental slackline moments. Now, as far as noise, I've used the same Traverse drive on the Camino Journey Highlander, which is their inflatable kayak, and you're gonna hear the gears, right? There's gears in here. They're not going to be silent, but the difference is that on a hard shell kayak like the Outpost, the noise reverberates through the hull a little more than it does the inflatable. And so if you've ever used a native propel drive, I would say it's pretty comparable when it comes to the noise. Now, there is something I don't love about the pedal drive, which I'm going to share later in this video. So now let's talk about storage and rigging. I think they did a good job. You got large front hatch storage, the rear tank well storage, integrated track systems, rod holders, accessory mounting capability, electronic space, right? It feels organized. That's something I feel like a lot of anglers will appreciate. It all has its place. But now let's talk about stability. Now, CAJO gives themselves a 10 out of 10 for stability. I do not, right? To me, a 10 out of 10 means this thing's ridiculously stable. I should be able to stand up, fish, move around, make a hard hook set, and almost forget that I'm standing in a kayak for 10 out of 10. I have been in a lot of kayaks that are a whole lot more stable than this one. And that doesn't mean the Outpost isn't stable, but I'm not gonna give it a 10 out of 10 because the manufacturer does. For me, stability, this lands somewhere between an 8 and an 8.5. So now let's talk about portability. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. Let's be honest, this is still a big fishing kayak. Can you move it solo? Yes. Do you want to car top this regularly? Probably not, right? This is much more in the trailer, bed extender, or kayak cart category. But that's going to be the trade-off you make for stability and storage and pedal drive systems and fishability, right? Now let's talk about rigability. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. When it comes to rigability, this kayak already comes pretty refined from the factory, and honestly, that's part of the appeal. A lot of times when you get into the premium fishing kayak category, you get a kayak that is predefined unless you're looking like new canoes. You've got plenty of places for fish finders, you got plenty of places for cameras, for rod holders, for lighting, and whatever other accessories you want to throw on here. But unlike some kayaks where you almost have to start adding stuff to make them fishable, the Outpost already feels pretty complete, right? Now, if you want even more rigability, CAJO also came out with their quad rails. These guys right here, this one is 26 inches long. I believe this one's going to be 44. They come out in 12 and 32 as well. And you can add a ton of additional track space depending on how crazy you want to get with your setup. And I really like that approach, right? You don't have to add a bunch of stuff to this kayak, but if you're the guy who wants 6 rod holders, 3 cameras, forward-facing sonar, lights, phone mount, cup holder, and a freaking satellite dish, right? You got some room to do it. Now, when it comes to speed and efficiency, 8.5 out of 10, right? This is where the pedal drive shines, where the hull design shines. And compared to a paddle only platform, you're gonna gain efficiency, you're gonna gain that boat control and fishing effectiveness. Now, is this thing going to paddle like a sleek touring kayak? No, but as a fishing platform, this should move pretty efficiently. Now, when it comes to maneuverability, I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10, right? Got that traditional beaver tail style rudder back here, right there. Now, listen, it works fine. You can work yourself around docks, grass lines, you can work around cover and get yourself positioned where you need to be. It does the job, but are you gonna be able to crank this rudder over on this kayak and make a wild cut? No. It's a 12'8" fishing kayak, and with that style rudder, there's only gonna be so much this kayak can do. So maneuverability, 7.5 out of 10. Nothing crazy. Turns fine, it does what it needs to do. Weight capacity, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10, right? Outpost is rated for 500 pounds. And for a kayak that's 12'8" long, 35 inches wide, I think that's right, really where it should be, right? But you guys know me, I like to shave about 20% off the manufacturer's capacity to get what I consider a realistic, usable number. So for me, this is more like 400 pounds of usable capacity. Just because a kayak can float at 500 pounds doesn't mean it's going to perform well at 500 pounds. The more weight you add, the lower it sits in the water, which can affect speed and maneuverability and stability, actually better stability, and overall performance. All right, now let's talk tracking. I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Let's take a look under here. Look at this hull design. You know, between the 12'8" hull and the rudder, this thing holds a line really well. And something I really like is that this rudder control isn't sloppy at all. It's not a bunch of play in the steering. When you make an adjustment, the rudder responds, which will make a huge difference when you're pedaling in the wind or trying to cover water. So for a 35-inch wide fishing kayak, tracks really well, 9 out of 10. Comfort, I'm gonna give this thing a 9.5 out of 10, right? First off, the seat's legitimately comfortable. This is one of those kayaks where the first thing you're gonna do is go online and buy a seat pad. You don't need one. And I really like the addition of, this is gonna be also an additional upgrade. It's going to be Horizon Perch. You can stand and fish on this, which you have to have pretty good balance to do that, to be completely honest with you. But it is nice to sit up high, right? Instead of dropping all the way back into the seat, you can sit up on the perch, maintain almost the same line of sight, and more than anything, this just gives you another position, right? Sit, perch, stand, and when you're spending 6, 8, 10 hours on the water, being able to change positions just to stretch makes a big difference. All right, so now we're at the room for improvement section of this video on the Outpost 128. Now, I'm gonna be a little ticky-tack because this is a premium kayak priced accordingly. And so these are some of the things I would have liked to see. First off is going to be the traverse drive. I like the traverse drive, however, this is going to be a rod holder slot, and it'd be nice to see a little bit of padding right here if you're going to put your rod against it all day long. Next up, and this one's actually going to be a big problem if they don't fix it, in my opinion, is going to be the seat straps. And so they are too stretchy, that nylon, And this is not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is, especially if you're pushing on a pedal kayak, you're kind of pushing back against the back of your seat. And when I do that, that nylon slips. So even if I tighten it up on both sides, nice and tight, when you're kind of pushing, cranking back, slips back. So that material needs to change. And it's not ticky-tack. That's an issue. Now, granted, could you tie this off in like a knot? It wouldn't do that. Yes, you could fix it that way, but this material needs to change. The next thing I have for you is there's just a lot of steps in this traverse drive to get it up. So if you fish a lake, there's a lot of weeds. This might be, I don't know, not a deal breaker, just annoying. So for example, in order to get this thing up and out, I gotta turn the prop indexer over. I gotta lock it in. Where's it at? There it is, locked in. So now the prop is gonna be aligned so it can come up and out of this hull. Now I gotta unlock it, lift it up. I have to lock it back into place. Now that's locked into place, undo this, and then move it forward, and then it clicks into place, and then I got some weeds in here right now. Now to put it down, you gotta go back here, hit this little clicker, pull it down, lock it, drop it. Oh. And now take this back off the prop indexer. Now you're good to go. Now, is it a deal breaker? No. But is it irritating 10 times a day? Maybe. I've just had other pedal drives that are a lot easier to clear the prop than this one. So now let's talk about the seat. Now it's going to give you a variety of different adjustment angles to sit in. And if you're paddling, you can use all four with no issues. However, if you're using the pedal drive, once you get past the second one and move up to the third one, the angle of which you're at, your leg is hitting this bar here every time you try to pedal. Just because of the angle, because you're trying to push down and away on your pedal drive, and the seat is angled up and away. And so the bottom of your thigh here just keeps on hitting this bar, and then it's almost like near impossible when you do that. So cool if you just want to relax. However, these two options right here aren't really great for the pedal drive for my body type. So it might be a little different for you, but for me, it's a no-go. Another room for improvement here, as you can see, there's a lot of like double stitching on here. Is really nice. Double stitching. However, when you get to the back here, it goes to like single stitching and then back to double stitching. And the problem is there's a single stitch along the bottom here. And as you guys can already see, it needs a double stitch. It's already started to blow out right there. And it's probably just a matter of time for that little bulge. It does the same. Now, something else with the seat, it's kind of unusual to have like armrests on a seat. It's kind of cool, but if you're a big guy, you may be limited to whether or not you can sit in here. Also, depending on how you cast, your elbows might hit this, may not. Just something to think about. So if you have the opportunity to try before you buy, speaking that this is what you're gonna be sitting in 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, you're gonna wanna check that out. All right, my next up, this is just kind of a warning, right? If you're thinking of putting like native Sidekicks on this, I wouldn't. I did just to test it out. I don't even know if it's rated for it, but I did it just to see. However, usually you put the native Sidekicks like right behind the seat, like the fulcrum of the kayak. However, when you move them back to the rails, it just puts a lot of load weight back there, and it actually ripped out, didn't rip it out of the kayak, but it bent out these metal racks here. And you can just kind of see that a little bit right there. So not a big problem. You're just gonna use some type of other type of cart, double bar cart, if that's how you plan on getting this to and from the water. All right, guys, got a problem with the traverse drive, and as some of you guys know, I get kayaks sent to me as trade for content. Now, the trade for that content, I promise not a favorable review. I promise a truthful review, because at the end of the day, my number one priority is you, making sure that you guys out there know where to put your hard-earned money. So this may be an isolated incident, but I wanted to share with you what I came across as I was kind of, I don't believe I was going above and beyond on the traverse drive, giving it some torque. I basically put the same amount of torque and pressure on it if I was to use any other pedal drive. And so let me share kind of what I came across. All right, so the issue I'm running into is whenever I go into reverse, start pedaling, it starts to pop. And going forward, if I hit it too hard, it's pop. I think it's popping out of the gear tines in this motor in here. And hear that? It's crunchy. Something is happening in there. It's not supposed to happen. All right, so my promise to you is I'm going to take this to Camino Journey I'm going to get an answer for you. I think it's pretty important. So stay tuned on that. All right, guys, I got an update for you. I actually sent that video over to Josh Thomas, the owner of Camino Journey, and I wanted to give him an opportunity to respond to the issues that I experienced. And I have to give him credit. He really didn't dodge any of them. So let's start with probably the biggest issue was the stripped gears on my Traverse drive, right? And Josh gave me some actual numbers. There are now more than 650 Traverse drives out in the wild, and including mine, they've had 7 reported cases of stripped gears. When the first failures happened, he told me that Camino Journey actually had those customers send the drives back so they can tear them apart, study the failures, and figure out what was happening. He said they were able to diagnose the issue and have now redesigned the lower unit for the upcoming V2 drive, specifically to prevent the failure from happening in the future. So they're sending me a replacement drive right now, and when the V2 becomes available in a few months, Josh is also going to send me one of those so I can test that one out, and I absolutely will. Now, another criticism that I had was the number of steps required to deploy and stow the drive and to clean it out. And interesting enough, Josh actually agreed with me. He told me he doesn't love how many steps it currently takes either, and that's why the version 2 Traverse drive is getting a completely redesigned foot operated deployment system, which he says is dramatically better. He actually sent me some behind the scenes prototype footage of that system, which is what you're seeing here.
Okay, so here's the new concept. To raise it, all you have to do is lift it out. Done. That's it. It's up. So to lower it.
So the V2 is also getting a redesigned lower unit and head unit that will make the drive considerably more serviceable. And they're also adding a sacrificial brake point to the base, so if you hit something hard with the lower unit, there's a designed failure point intended to protect the rest of the system. Now let's talk about the seat straps. I thought that was a big issue, right? And according to Josh, that issue has already been addressed. They're sending me the updated straps so I can test those straps for myself as well. And the front deck, which was an issue I didn't realize as I didn't put a motor on it, but he said he's already making that change as well. The new Outposts are now shipping with EVA foam blocks flanking the front hatch opening, right? That adds structural support when you motorize the bow, but also helps keep the hatch properly seated and watertight. And something else they're doing, which I didn't have issue with, but the steering system is getting a significant update as well. The V2 steering handle, which Josh says is arriving around the end of September, switches to a softer 316 stainless steel cable and adds internal pulleys, which is going to make that a whole lot more smooth and more durable. Then there's already a V3 plan for early 2027 that takes those improvements and adds more ergonomic handle design. So where does that leave my review? Here's the important part, right? Nothing Josh told me changes what happened during my testing. The gear stripped, the seat straps slipped, and I thought there were too many steps involved in deploying the drive. Those things happened, and I'm leaving them in this video because that's the kayak that I tested. But here's another side of the product reviews that I think sometimes get overlooked. How does a company respond when something goes wrong? And in this case, Camino Journey didn't tell me I was using it wrong. I've had other companies during warranty experiences tell me that, right? They didn't tell me they never heard of these problems before. Instead, the company acknowledged the issues, right? And not only that, they're making all of it right. And they're gonna be sending me the updated components so I can test those fixes myself. And Josh also told me something else that I think sums it up pretty well, right? Continuous improvement is a cycle that never ends. And that's exactly what I wanna see from a company bringing a relatively new product to market. Now, granted, this isn't his first rodeo. He did it with Vibe, but in the context of Camino Journey, it is. So at the end of the day, everything I said and every rating I gave this kayak, right, was based on the Outpost that was sitting underneath me during that test. And I'm not gonna give them credit today for the improvements I haven't tested yet, but I absolutely will give them credit for listening and responding and standing behind their product. And when that V2 Traverse drive gets here, well, we're gonna put it through the same type of test. So there you have it. Hopefully that gives you a well-rounded view of what's happening with the Outpost. Now, if you have any questions that I may not have been able to answer in this video, throw those in the comments below. You might have asked something that someone else is thinking, and so that'd be incredibly helpful. Thanks for watching, guys. Here's another video that YouTube thinks you're gonna love. See you out in the water.